Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Kit Gray on the line, and he's president and co-founder over at PodcastOne. Kit, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adam. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
All right, Kit. So we've got a lot to talk about today. I definitely want to get into what you're doing over at PodcastOne. I understand it's a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, ticker symbol PODC. So got a lot to talk about there. And really just want to get into the overall business of podcasting. I believe that you have a unique vantage point from your seat and from working in the industry the way that you do, and just, overall comments on what's going on with the industry, the future of, and I'll ask you to bring out that crystal ball, man. So we've got a lot to talk about today. But just to get us kicked off here, I see the title co-founder. How'd you get into this business? Where'd all that start?
Oh, yeah. Well, again, thanks, Adam, for having me today. The podcasting business really started in 2009, 2010, and I started listening to Ricky Gervais, over in
So that's
in
super
London.
early. You're early in then.
Yeah.
It was called podcasting back then, yes?
That it was, and it was really the only thing free on Apple Podcasts or Apple iTunes, right, and their store. And so what happened was I lived in Los Angeles, and I grew up in Boston, and, anyone from Boston can't stand the Lakers, and that's like a big deal to all of us. And I'd be driving around, either listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers on K-Rock or Lakers talk and on the radio. And I worked in radio. I worked for iHeart and represented radio stations. And I started listening to Boston sports talk radio in LA while I was stuck on the 405. And back then, they didn't have iPhones the way they do now, and you had to basically download a file and drag it over to your iPod or MP3 player that you had, and then you remember those tape players that you put in your car, the wires would be attached to it.
Oh, yeah.
You really had to want it. And I knew that in the radio world, that was called P1s, right? These are the people that listen to that radio station or that personality every day, no matter what. And I figured if anybody's going through that process that I was going through, then there's a market for it. And if I could bundle a bunch of these people together, just like they do, network radio, and offer them to advertisers, that would get the best results ever. Just because when you're an advertiser, you want to hit the P1s in radio, and pretty much anybody going through that experience of downloading a podcast and listening, those are your P1s. Those are your, so I knew you'd have great results, and it worked. I reached out to a guy named Adam Carolla, who, if you remember from The Man Show. Or,
Dr. Drew, the original.
Yeah, on MTV and Westwood One, and he had a podcast. He was nationally syndicated after Stern on the West Coast, so he had that going on, and he had a studio out in Glendale. I went out and saw him, and we talked about doing some stuff together. I was able to get, Pro Flowers and Sherry's Berries and LegalZoom and Go to My Meeting, Go to My PC, and eventually Fox bought into advertising on his show, and then I started working with Bill Burr and Mark Maron and The Nerdist with Chris Hardwick, and I started putting some networks together, and then a guy named Norm Pattis, who started Westwood One some 40 years ago, he knew Adam and Dr. Drew and said, how's this guy making all this money? What are they doing? And he wanted to get back in the game, and so we started making a network and had some money to hire real salespeople and some tech behind it, and it exploded. Really, the iPhone changed everything, and then the pandemic changed everything too, and obviously that had a weakness to it, but it also allowed people to get used to downloading podcasts and watching video content where people are not in the same room, and maybe they didn't have makeup, and it just set a different way of consuming media and conversations that, has exploded, and it's just such a great medium, and it's just, I always knew it was going to be this big. I really did, to be honest, and it's just been fascinating to see how great some of these personalities are and all the jobs it's created, because really radio, TV, print, they're all hurting so bad that audio changed it, gave opportunities to, these companies to evolve, and the podcast really has exploded. So it's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to me because in terms of a medium, I mean, it's, over 20 years old. But to me, I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's based on the technology and things like, it came out of radio. So like host read ads or things like that. But dynamic advertising and being able to reward the small content creator, which wasn't always possible. So I like to tell people we're like in month 6 to year 1 of like YouTube. YouTube over 150 million channels, podcasts. I mean, 4 million, give or take wherever you get the data, 4 million or so. Not all of them are active. Maybe they're active, maybe they're not, whatever. But we're in the very, very beginning. So I have that argument all the time, daily. And once I give the data and my 2 cents, but I'm not running a big PodcastOne that's been around forever. We've been around 9 years over here, roughly, in different iterations. But on your end, what do you see? Give me that crystal ball. Where does this go? Do we get to 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, especially thinking about places like Africa? And I don't know another word for this, but the dumb phones, those phones other than, your 2G phones, your 3G phones, like, I don't know the technical term for that, but all the other hundreds of millions of people that are now being brought online through podcasts, and now with AI being able to, translate entire shows like super cheaply and effectively. Where do you see the industry going?
Yeah, it's amazing. Dynamic ad insertion, monetizing libraries of older content. So if you just discovered this person has a podcast, you can monetize those impressions. That's all changed. Targetability and ads for behavioral targets or, geo-targeting. We have a lot of like geo-targeted campaigns. There's programmatic campaigns. So that industry is evolving and really following the YouTube video model in a way. The YouTube side of it is amazing. I mean, really, they've only been in the game for about 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And they are the number one platform for not only discovery, but also consumption. It's not how I do it, but that's a lot of younger people in that 20 to 30-year-olds. That's what they do. That's what they consume YouTube. And it's exploded for podcasts, and being able to embed post reads in there and have, advertisements in there has really expanded it. The business isn't going to slow down. I mean, you're 100% right. It's now changing into IP ownership and books and television shows and interview shows and live shows. I was telling a buddy of mine this morning that I saw Kill Tony in Madison Square Garden with, Joe Rogan was there and Andrew Schultz, and those guys are just, having just an amazing experience out there, and your fans are just going with them. So these communities are evolving. How people learn and have conversations, real conversations, is through podcasting. You look at the presidential elections, look at how President Trump took advantage of that and understood the power of podcasting, the power of Joe Rogan and some of these other top shows. He really took advantage of that. And, I think Elon Musk said it right. If you really get to know someone in a 2-hour interview, you really do. And I don't think the other side took advantage of that or really understood that. They're starting to now. I mean, you can see Gavin Newsom is on a bunch of he has his own podcast now. I've actually meeting with Kamala Harris's team tomorrow to discuss, podcasting and how she can be better at it. And so people are real. This went from, oh, that's a funny thing that you do, or that's cute, to changing the world, right? And having conversations like these where you can get real and you can make your own decisions about what people are saying rather than being persuaded by certain content, certain articles, certain stories that may not be real. If you're a smart individual, you get to listen to something. You can, in some cases, listen to other sides of the fence and learn and respect each other maybe a little bit differently, which I would say we all should be doing a little bit more of. So yeah, it's fun. I think you can learn a lot. I think it's just a great way to be connected to a community. And, I don't see it slowing down. Radio groups are doing more locally than ever in the podcasting space. We at PodcastOne are super excited. We do our own shows. We represent shows. We create scripted series and sell those to TV networks. We do live shows. We do productions for companies like Lovesac and Microsoft and Motor Trend, where we'll produce their podcast for them in a professional manner and do the talent booking and the marketing. And, it's really smart for some of these brands to get involved in podcasting. So it's been fun.
I love it. Makes a lot of sense. And where do you see, like, talk to me about some of the visions with this growth that's rising, and talk to me from, well, your vision for PodcastOne going forward as a publicly traded company. Like, what can you tell us?
Yeah, so it's really a special thing for us to be able to provide equity to all our podcasters and our producers and everybody, because you really feel like you're all swimming in the same direction. And, there's a lot of cross marketing between similar podcasts. We do, one talent will be on one show, one talent will be on another show, and a lot of that as well. So it allows the opportunity for our partners to be involved in a bigger picture. We, see the 30 million downloads we have a month or whatever it is now. We have the ability to create hits. We launched a show called Barnum Town, which was done in conjunction of Epic and their movie scripted department. And it was a cool show. It's really about a true story in Barnum Town, North Carolina, which is a fishing town, very small. Back in the 80s and 90s, Pablo Escobar, when he got kind of blocked out of Miami and cocaine distribution, started using that port, and it changed the town. And it was a really cool, funky story, and we made a podcast out of it. We had the talent on the show go over to all these podcasts that we have to talk about it. We were able to create a hit and then sell it. And that's where our direction will be. We'll use our network, which will continue to drive the business and the ad revenue and subscription revenue, but also create hit and introduce people to the shows that might become movies and different things like that. So that's where we're headed. The medium, like I said, is not slowing down. It continues to grow. There's more podcasts out there. There's better guests. There's better talent involved. The talent is upping their game. They're doing their research. They're having great interviews like you are, and you really spend time on it, and it shows, and if you don't do that, it also shows. So the people that think this is easy, you and I know, Adam, it's not easy.
Yeah, and I like it because the barrier of entry for even those that are, so right now for some of you that are listening, maybe you're thinking about starting a show, you're new, and you're like, man, Kit's talking about a lot of stuff, selling his show, doing this, doing that, up in the game. I'm trying to get my first episode out. It's okay. Get that first episode out. The fun part about podcasting is really, when your listeners, it's subjective. So what you think may be terrible, and it might be terrible for some people. For other people, they love it, and they want to get behind and root for a new host who doesn't know what they're doing yet. Just, in my opinion, just be authentic. Let your audience know you're new, you're getting your feet wet, and bear with you. That could be your first episode, but ultimately people need to have time to hear your voice, to get used to you, to fall in love with your message and get comfortable, because what I found in my being in this business a little bit of time, not 20, 30 years yet, but being in it as long as I have, it's fun because you really can build a community around your show, around what you're doing, around the guests. And it's unlike, to me, any other medium from that standpoint. It's the difference between you walk into a conference or somewhere that or that you're known at, and people walking up to you and they've been listening to you all year, and they give you a hug out of the blue, and you're like, what's going on? But they see you like family, and that's your audience, and it's a whole different feeling than maybe some of the other mediums out there. In my opinion, it's more approachable, is what I would
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, it's such an intimate experience. The audio experience is you just have the theater of mind, right, is into it. And it was perfect advice. If you're thinking about doing this, do it. Go ahead. You can't really break anything. You just, you go out and start to engage with your community. If you have some people that are following you, ask them what they want to hear about. What do they want to talk about? What's a question they might want to ask this guest? What, follow-ups, or, hey, please share this. Adam Carolla, when he started, it was a lot, he called it the pirate ship, but it was a lot of, tell a buddy that this is out there and what podcasting is and how you listen. And that's how it grew, because it's communities. And that's where you're seeing people come up to you at random places. And I've been listening to you. I love that interview. There's such passion for it, because you're really you feel like you're in the room when you're having that conversation and you're listening to a podcast. So it is special.
It's awesome. Well, Kit, man, this has been a lot of fun having you on the show today and getting a perspective from an OG. You've been there a long time in the podcasting game. Come on. That being said, if somebody is watching or listening to this and they want to follow up, they want to learn more about PodcastOne or any of the shows or work that you guys are putting out over there, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can go to PodcastOne. That's PodcastOne.com. You can follow us. We're all on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter and all those great places. But our new shows are highlighted there. We've got some amazing ones. We've really launched a lot of really fun ones. A&E, we have their cluster of podcasts with Cold Case and I Survived that we just took on. Ancient Aliens. So if you're into that world, you can learn about that. But if you're into pop culture, we got plenty of that kind of stuff. And, it's been a lot of fun. So we're really looking forward to the future of PodcastOne. And, Adam, we couldn't thank you very much. Thank you any more than having us as a guest today. And enjoy yourself and good luck as you continue to grow.
Awesome. Appreciate you. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes so you can just click on the links and head right on over and check out all the work that's being done at PodcastOne. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're putting out new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Kit, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.